Happy hour at Walters is from 4 to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. $5 specials on draft beers, house wine, and rail cocktails. Walters is located just across the street from the ballpark.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat, emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month. Even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending. Zero tears. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Sleep Number's new collections are designed to adapt to the changing nature of your life and your sleep needs. Whether it's the personalized comfort of the new Comfort Mode mattress, the targeted pressure relief of the Comfort Next mattress, or the Climate Collection that actively cools or warms to help you fall asleep and stay asleep.
And now, get early access to our biggest sale of the year. Save 25% on the new Comfort Next Luxe for a limited time. Only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com.
Ruiz sets an outside target. Here's the pitch. Swing a long drive right field. Way back it goes, and it is gone. Into the chop house for Dom Smith. 4-0 Atlanta. That's home run number 8 for Dom. 2 pitches prior, he was struck out, but he won the ABS Challenge. They blast that home run, the Braves' 3rd solo shot of the night against Mikolas. The 2-0. Swing a line drive, base hit right field. On a fastball, House breaks up the no-hit bid with a single the other way with 2 outs in the top of the 7th. And the Truist Park crowd, some will come to their feet. They're going to applaud Martin Perez with his no-hit bid effort into the 7th inning. The pitch from Yean. Swinging a line drive left center field toward the gap. Chasing is Young. Can he get there? He reaches out. He dives, and it's off his glove, rolling away. He almost had it. 2-run score. Riley into second with a double, and it's 8-0. I mean, Young almost made a spectacular grab, but that's the way things are going. It was in his glove, and then it wasn't. And instead of a spectacular catch, it's a 2-run double.
And welcome to Nats Chat. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. I'm joined by Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. He's at Truist Park in Atlanta. We have arrived at the day before the 2026 MLB trade deadline, which is on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And the Nats in MLB's 2026 regular season now are 2 games under 500 off 5 losses in 6 games and 8-3 loss at the Atlanta Braves on Saturday night in Game 3 of a 4-game series. The Nats now are 55-57 with a run differential of plus 18 and now are 3.5 games out of the National League's 3rd of 3 wild card spots. The Braves now are National League East best 66-45 with an NL East best run differential of plus 106. Things are not going well for the Nats right now. They on Saturday night flirted with being no hit. And how about the circumstance of the flirtation with being no hit? So the Braves scratched their scheduled starting pitcher for Saturday night's game, the former Nats prospect Reynaldo Lopez. This due to left knee inflammation. The Braves starting pitcher was Martin Perez, and he tossed 7 scoreless innings with 6 strikeouts. The Nats got no hit for 6 2/3 innings. Brady House ended the no-hit bid with a 2-out opposite field single to right field in the top of the 7th. We don't know to what extent recent results are impacting what Nats president of baseball operations Paul Taboni is thinking regarding the trade deadline. It may well be that his mind was made up a while ago. But Mark, any notion of the Nats doing so well in the lead up to the deadline that they force Taboni to be a true buyer, that notion is looking unlikely, as the Nats have 1 game left before a deadline at which they now are guaranteed to be below 500.
Yeah, and I made the point last night that if they did not win both of these games to finish out the weekend, that they were guaranteed to have a losing record come trade deadline day. And I understand this is a weird season across the board where a bunch of teams are just packed together in that range of a couple games over, a couple games under 500. And so it maybe doesn't carry the same connotation that it would in other seasons. But psychologically, it's hard to say that you have a losing record and you're in it, that the right move for you to do is to buy and try to go all in on winning this season. And I get it. It would only be the difference of 1 or 2 games slipping one way or the other. And there's still almost 2 months of baseball to be played. So a lot can change. But I do think there is something to be said just for this idea of you have a losing record at the trade deadline. Can you really make the case to add on instead of subtract? Now, we'll see. My guess is that he already has had in his mind for a little while what he intended to do. I think the results of this week can impact that one way or the other, but it may not be a drastic change. He may have been thinking all along, let's try to get a reliever or two to help us out, but let's be willing to listen to offers for good players who might bring back several good young players in return who can help us in the long run, but even maybe help us in the short term as well. We'll see, but it does feel like the events of the last 4 days have given a lot more clarity to what was a pretty wide open situation.
And I think the events of the last 4 days have made the fan base more accepting of the Nats potentially selling, and in a weird way, it may actually be doing Paul Taboni some good, because if he wanted to sell all along, or at the very least he wanted to do what we've discussed, which is both sell and buy with maybe a slight lean towards sell, a la the Curtis Mead trade, I think now you have a fan base that's going to be more understanding of not being an all-in buyer, given what has transpired now with this 4-game losing streak and with 5 losses in 6 games. I just think if I'm Taboni, and I think the Curtis Mead trade was a sign of this, the idea has been we can add, but we're going to do so while selling valuable tradable assets, so like a Curtis Mead, like a Foster Griffin. I would be surprised if Griffin is not traded. Luis Garcia Jr. is a little trickier, but, I think none of us would be stunned if he ends up being traded. And I think the idea has been you can add to the team, but it's more looking toward the future while selling off these valuable tradable assets now. And I think that's the way to approach it. Like, I still do wonder with the reliever thing, if what he's going to do is get a reliever who's under contract / under team control beyond the season. And that is what he's thinking. And that now the notion of like getting a rental is out the door. And that may well have been what he wanted to do all along. And these recent results now just make the fan base more understanding of what Taboni has wanted to do all along.
Yeah, I think that could be. It really, I keep saying this, but it really boils down to what the offers are. And that goes to both sides of that equation. If you can get a rental reliever for, let's say, your, 27th best prospect, well, I don't know there's a lot of harm in doing something like that in an attempt to try to help your team get through the rest of this season and feel like if you did have a good week, because all it would take is one hot week for them to be right back in the middle of the race, and you don't want to be kind of left out in the cold without having addressed your number one need. I think in a perfect world, yes, you'd love to get guys who are under control beyond this season. But if for some reason that's too steep of a price and you can find some short-term pieces that can help you, sure, do that as long as you're not mortgaging the future. And then simultaneously, yes, if Foster Griffin, if there's not an extension to be made with him, and if he can get you some good quality players who are going to be here for a while, then yes, I think you absolutely have to consider that. Garcia, kind of the same thing. It really depends on what they offer to him. But I do agree that, and this is what I'm talking about, the psychological aspect of it, if they were 2 games over 500, it's harder to sell to your fan base that, oh, no, we're actually not going for it. We're going to trade away some of our best short-term players for long-term pieces. When you're 2 games under, it is a little easier to make that point. And I think if there were fans who were on the fence about it, I think what's happened in the last week probably has swayed them back into the direction of, hey, this has still been a very positive season. The timeline can still be quicker than anybody anticipated, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this year. If there are ways to improve your team to give you a much better chance in 2027, I think that's a reasonable way to look at this.
Do you think Paul Taboni needs ownership approval with whatever he decides to do regarding the trade deadline? And I'm not so much talking about like if he adds significant payroll. Any head of baseball operations who adds major payroll needs ownership approval. I think, that's totally acceptable and understandable. But just with whatever he decides to do, buy, sell, trade Foster Griffin, keep Foster Griffin, etc. Do you think Taboni needs to get the green light from the Lerner ownership group, or do you think that Taboni has some real autonomy here to do as he sees fit?
I think it's mostly autonomy, but I think they'd want to be kept in the loop. I don't think they want to be surprised by anything that he does. But as long as he's keeping them informed and saying, hey, we've got offers 1, 2, and 3 for Foster Griffin, and I feel good about offer 3. And I think I'm going to take that. And not to say, like, is it okay? Do you give your approval to that? But, like, here's what I'm thinking, just so you guys are aware. I think it's more like that. The caveat would be if you're talking about a really important player who's not just here in the short term. If there was a CJ Abrams offer, I think you do go to them just to make sure. And again, you might say, hey, listen, I've got a really good offer for CJ Abrams. It's my advice that we would take this, but I want to run this by you first. I think they would probably want to at least be involved in some way in something like that. But if you're talking about a Foster Griffin, the Curtis Meade move, even a Luis Garcia move, I'm not sure that he has to go to them and actually get them to sign off on it, provided that there's not a big transfer of money one way or the other. I think it would only involve the big name guys. But I do think, and I think Taboni's been very good at this, at keeping everybody in the loop who needs to be in the loop. And that's ownership, the manager, and the players themselves. He's been very forthcoming with these players and trying to keep them abreast. I don't know if it's every day, but certainly every few days to say, hey, here's where things stand. Here's what I'm hearing. He doesn't want anybody in the organization, I think, to be blindsided by whatever he ends up doing by Monday.
And that's good. I think that's to be commended and to be lauded. That's a respectable way of doing business. So how about what happened in this game on Saturday night? We're used to seeing position players get scratched from a lineup. It's not often that a starting pitcher for a game gets scratched, but that's what happened with this game. As I mentioned, the starting pitcher for the Braves was supposed to be Reynaldo Lopez. He gets scratched due to left knee inflammation that he supposedly suffered or at least started to feel while warming up for the game. That was odd. And so the Braves go with Martin Perez. You're not sure what to expect. Perez is a veteran pitcher, so, that he did well isn't shocking. But that he did this well when he wasn't expecting to pitch, I mean, how about that? 7 shutout innings, 6 strikeouts, no hits the Nats for 6 2/3 until that Brady House 2-out single in the top of the 7th. How often do you see an opposing starting pitcher get scratched and then his replacement do as well as Martin Perez did in this game?
Well, it brings to mind a certain Miguel Batista, a last-minute replacement for Steven Strasburg, the infamous Miss Iowa game. So perhaps this was Martin Perez's Miss Iowa moment or Miss Georgia or whatever you want to pick for that, because there were some comparable aspects to it. It was about 35 minutes before first pitch. At least that's when the Nats found out and when everybody was told what was going on. And, what made this one notable is you're switching from a right-hander to a left-hander. And we know how much the Nats play the matchups. They overhauled their lineup. It was a very different lineup that they fielded to start this game than they were originally intending to do. The other thing, we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it's a big deal for them. A lot of their offensive success this year, I think, you can point to their game planning and their prep work in the hours leading up to that night's game to get everybody on the same page of what they're trying to do against the opposing starter. They were not able to do that. They went through a whole pregame prep for Reynaldo Lopez, and then all of a sudden, as guys are getting their uniforms on, some are already on the field stretching, some are maybe in the trainer's room. All of a sudden they said, oh, hang on, we're changing up the lineup. We're facing a brand new pitcher. Hey, here's the scouting report on him. But it was not the full normal prep that they would do. Now, everybody's careful to say that's not an excuse for how they performed. And, these kind of things do happen now and again. But it did make me think, boy, how much of their success this year do we owe to the work they're doing before they ever take the field? And it's not just what they're doing once the game starts. If you believe in that, this game might have been a good example of just how much that has made a difference.
So I thought that very thing, but then I saw, okay, well, Perez was supposed to be the Braves starting pitcher for Sunday afternoon's Game 4. So wouldn't a substantial amount of prep work already have been done? I mean, the Nats obviously aren't doing all the prep work the day of the game. Now, maybe they are relaying the information to the players on the day of the game, and maybe that's the difference. But I would think the Nats could have been able to adjust things to where, okay, we have this intel on Perez. Let's just communicate that to our guys now. It'll be in a rush fashion. It's not ideal, but it's something we can do. Maybe it's not as simple as I'm making it seem, but I would think the Nats already had a good bit of information on Martin Perez.
And they faced him before this year, if I remember right. So yes, I think it is more about the conveying of that information in a very compressed window of time. They have a hitters meeting every afternoon, either before or after BP, and they go through the full game plan and, hey, here's how he's going to attack you. Here's what you need to do, et cetera, et cetera. And that's done as a group. I'm not sure they were able to, in that short amount of time, do that in a typical group setting, and that it may have had to be scrambled. Hey, you over here, here's what you need to know. Okay, by the way, you're in the lineup now. You weren't before. Here's what you need to know. And then it's probably not quite as big a deal as you would think, but there is something to it. And yes, they would have info on Perez. They've faced him before. They're planning to face him on Sunday. But it's probably more about that actual group interaction, going through a whole game plan and conveying that to everyone in a timely fashion where now they can take the field already knowing what they're intending to do instead of kind of scrambling at the last minute.
The Nats were shut out until the top of the eighth, in which the Nats scored 3 runs. The Nats for the game, just the 3 runs, just 4 hits, which were 2 doubles and 2 singles. Did work 3 walks. Did go 2 for 6 with runners in scoring position. So, hey, the Nats did get a couple of hits with runners in scoring position off going 0 for 17 in the RISP department over the first 2 games of this series. Dylan Cruz, he is the Nats starting left fielder and number 3 batter. 1 for 4 with an RBI double. Cruz in that Nats 3-run eighth had a 2-out first pitch, opposite field RBI double to right center field off the warning track to cut the Nats deficit to 8-1. CJ Abrams, he is the Nats starting shortstop and number 4 batter, went 1 for 4 with a 2-run single. Did commit a fielding error, which we'll get to, but Abrams in that Nats 3-run eighth, a 2-out, 2-run single into center field to cut the Nats deficit to 8-3. You know, you never know how things might have played out, but the Nats are down 4-0 and then give up 4 runs in the bottom of the 7th and then respond with 3 runs in the top of the 8th. Now, maybe if the Braves don't score 4 in the bottom of the 7th, the Nats don't score 3 in the top of the 8th. All kinds of things get impacted by a score of a game, right? Pitch selection, pitch sequencing, etc. But seeing the Nats score 3 runs in the 8th, I did say to myself, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, boy, if only the Nats had been better in that bottom of the 7th, what might we be looking at in terms of the nature of this game?
Sure. It was already 8-0 by the time they came up in the 8th and put together that rally, and it's too little, too late. Whole different story at 4-0. Now, maybe the Braves are using some higher leverage relievers at that spot, so even that has to be taken into consideration. And maybe in some ways the Nats needed to face a big deficit like that to take some of the pressure off when they finally got a runner in scoring position and drove him home. If it's a tighter game, maybe they're struggling to come through in that spot. But the point being that bottom of the 7th was pretty ugly, where Riley Cornelio walks 3 batters and then another reaches on a really bad CJ Abrams error. And that kind of opened the floodgates and turned it into a rout. That was disappointing, to be sure. And who knows what would have happened otherwise. But you would have at least liked to see if they had a shot at 4-0 of coming back. Once it's 8-0, you know that's it.
Imagine buying your kid a toy only to find the batteries aren't included, or buying furniture but missing the tools to build it. Frustrating, right? Now imagine the exact same feeling, but you're paying way more. That is what buying business software usually feels like. Fragmented, disconnected, and incredibly expensive. Odoo completely changes that. Odoo is a complete, fully integrated business suite where all your apps actually talk to each other. We're talking automated lead routing for your sales team, seamless AI integration, and intuitive point-and-click website builder. It's everything your business needs to scale, saving you time, headaches, and money. Stop piecing your software together. Go to odoo.com. That's ODOO.com to learn more.
Sleep Number's new collections are designed to adapt to the changing nature of your life and your sleep needs. Whether it's the personalized comfort of the new Comfort Mode mattress, the targeted pressure relief of the Comfort Next mattress, or the Climate Collection that actively cools or warms to help you fall asleep and stay asleep.
And now, get early access to our biggest sale of the year. Save 25% on the new Comfort Next Luxe for a limited time. Only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com.
Here's the set. And the pitch. And it's to the backstop. Acuna coming home. Ruiz throws to Yean covering. The tag is not in time. And it's 6-0 Atlanta on the wild pitch. Eddie Jean's first pitch to the backstop. The Nationals made it a close play, but Acuna sliding in safely with a hand to the plate.
So with the Braves 4-run 7th, we had 2 Nats relievers in this game combining to allow 4 runs, all of which were unearned in 2 innings. Riley Cornelio officially allowed 4 runs, all of which were unearned in 2/3 of an inning, but he and that Braves 4-run 7th got charged with all 4 runs. They were all unearned due to a fielding error by shortstop C.J. Abrams. But Cornelio in the inning issued 3 walks, including a 2-out bases-loaded 4-pitch walk of ex-Nat Dominic Smith for a 5-0 Braves lead. And our guy Eddie Yean, he officially tossed 1 1/3 scoreless innings with 2 strikeouts. But boy, is this a case of the final line not accurately depicting what exactly went down. Yean in that Braves 4-1 7th issued a 2-out bases-loaded run-scoring wild pitch on his very first pitch for a 6-0 Braves lead, and then gave up a 2-out 2-run double by Austin Riley to the left center field gap for an 8-0 Braves lead. Center fielder Jacob Young nearly made a spectacular diving backhanded catch, but the ball came out of his glove. What is up with the Nats defense lately from a standpoint of failed attempts at diving catches? This has happened at least 3 or 4 times in recent games, and these are valiant efforts. You know, I'm not necessarily faulting the players for this, but it's like just a lot of bad luck, a lot of bad puck luck for the Nats lately when it comes to attempted diving catches.
And some guys who you normally think of making the kind of catches, like a Jacob Young, you kind of expect him to do it. And they've mostly been like mid to late in games that have been kind of significant moments that have altered the outcomes of games. It's unfortunate. And you're right. Yean doesn't get charged with any runs, but he contributed significantly to that rally. Not that Cornelio did a good job either, getting into that jam. Disappointing in a lot of ways. You know, I know the focus here is on the offense and how little they did. The pitching staff did not really help them out much, digging them into an early hole by Miles Mikolas, and then the bullpen creating an even bigger hole at the end of the game.
Yeah, this was the bad version of Riley Cornelio, unfortunately. All right, I want to highlight the defense of C.J. Abrams. He is having a spectacular offensive season. Of that, there is no doubt. We have chronicled the greatness of Abrams' offensive season throughout the campaign. But the defense remains a major issue. So he has this bad fielding error in what ends up being a 4-1 7th for the Braves. There also was an odd play while starting pitcher Miles Mikolas was in the game. Now, I don't know how much of this truly was on C.J. Abrams, but there was a play in the bottom of the second, a went-out first pitch opposite field double, and I put double in quotation marks, by Mike Yastrzemski on a lazy fly ball to no man's land in left field. Abrams on the Yastrzemski double failed in his attempt at a running backhanded catch. He overran the ball. It was a catchable ball. It was not an easy play, and I do wonder if the left fielder Dylan Cruz should have taken more charge and made that play. So, you know, I don't know to what extent we should fault Abrams for that play.
Mike Yastrzemski stands in from the left side, swings and pops it up. Left field line chasing is Abrams. Long run, and he overruns it. Lands behind him, picked up by Cruz, and into second goes Yastrzemski.
But during the game, took a look at the advanced defensive stats for C.J. Abrams because, you know, we've talked about how, well, the defense seems better lately, right? And so I said, well, maybe Abrams' defensive numbers have gotten better. They really haven't. And if you just go by one of the big-time advanced defensive metrics these days, outs above average per StatCast, Abrams entering this game was at minus 13 for this regular season. I want to read to you real quick his outs above averages for each of his seasons with the Nats. Okay, we'll start with his brief period of time with the Nats in 2022. 2022 minus 6, 2023 minus 9, 2024 minus 18, 2025 minus 11, 2026 entering Saturday minus 13. It's not just that he has been bad defensively, it's that he has been hideous defensively. Like, these numbers are really bad. And this idea of, well, he's young enough to where he can get better defensively, it's not happening. And when you see an error like that error that we saw in the 7th, and he's had some other errors lately, it really does strike at least me, and I'm guessing more than just me, it's not happening with him at shortstop. And I really think next season needs to be the time for him to move off of shortstop. And I hope that the organization is thinking in those terms. Do you think the team is thinking in those terms? He's been outstanding offensively. Don't want to lose sight of that. But the defense remains a major issue at a premium defensive position. We have enough of a sample size now to where I don't think it's unreasonable to say this is who he is defensively. Get him off a shortstop, move him to second base, go with Nasim Nunez or someone else as the regular shortstop, and you'll be better defensively.
It's a fascinating dilemma, and I don't know if they really have the answer for that in the shorter term. I'm not going to say short term because he's obviously going to keep playing shortstop the rest of this year. But as far as next year goes, I think the dilemma all along, if you're Paul Taboni and Blake Butera, was that you came into this season believing that there was a decent chance that you might be trying to trade him, whether at the deadline or after the season or whenever that might be. And as we've discussed, in theory, he's commanding more in a trade if he is a shortstop than he is if he's a second baseman or something else. So you stick with it in the hopes that he does well enough, shows enough improvement, and that the bat is so good, which it has been, that then that makes him still attractive and you can trade him as an all-star MVP caliber shortstop, not as a second baseman. The problem is the team did so well, he's done so well, that it's hard to imagine they could make a move for that right now. And so now you're thinking, well, what is the plan for next year? And I don't really know the answer to that. If they are serious about going into 2027 and trying to contend and not just hoping things fall into place like they did this year, there's certainly a valid argument, as you just laid out, that he should not be the shortstop, that it's time to move him to another position. And whether it's Nasim Nunez or Seaver King or somebody else in the minors is ready to come up and play that position, that it would be time to do that. But when you make that move, you're saying you're no longer a shortstop and you are not valued as a shortstop. And that does change how the rest of the league looks at you. And it changes from CJ's perspective what he's worth as a free agent a couple years down the road. Now, I'm not saying it's the Nationals' obligation to worry about that part of the equation. But if they were going to do that, he's got to give buy-in himself to it. And he's going to see that dollar figure drop if he's a second baseman instead of a shortstop. That's just the way it is. So it's a complicated issue. And, we'll get to that eventually. And I'll be curious to see how they would approach such a situation. For now, he's their shortstop and they want to try to keep his value as high as they can. But eventually, yes, that is a discussion that's going to have to be had if they intend for Abrams to be a part of this team in 2027 and 2028 as well.
Yeah, I just think we're at a point now to where eventually is now. That which has been viewed as inevitable needs to be imminent. And, when it comes to the trade value thing, I hear you on that. But here's the thing. Other teams aren't dumb. Like, they know that Abrams isn't good defensively. And all you need is access to the internet, okay? And you go to any of these advanced statistical sites and you can look up Abrams' defensive metrics, and they're really bad. It was interesting. I was watching the YouTube show for MLB insider Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic recently, and he was talking about CJ Abrams. And he said everyone around the sport knows that he's not a shortstop. Like, Rosenthal said this. So, it's an open secret that CJ Abrams isn't a good defensive shortstop. So, if the Nats move him off shortstop, I don't know if that necessarily impacts a trade value like we think, just because I don't think you're fooling other teams at this point. It'd be one thing if he was kind of sort of bad defensively at shortstop. The numbers really smack you in the face. He's really bad at shortstop. And it's almost like it's not fair to him anymore to be playing shortstop. He's not good at it. So why continue to put him in a position in which he just doesn't do well? Move him to second base. That's not like an unimportant defensive position. Hopefully he's better there. And you'll improve the team in that regard. And of course, this is assuming that Abrams is with the team moving forward. But, even if he's with the team next year to start the year and then they trade him midseason or something like that, I think the team still will benefit if he's not playing shortstop. I think he's really hurt the team with his defense at shortstop. And I just don't think we need to play this game anymore. It's not getting better. He's been in the majors multiple years now. I know he's young from a numerical standpoint. He's in his mid-20s, but it's not happening. And I don't know that all of a sudden it's going to start happening for him defensively.
So I think two things that come to mind. One is, are we sure that he would be a good second baseman or a much better second baseman? Are the issues he has at shortstop related to the position or just his natural defensive abilities? That the play in this game, a lot of the plays, they're just routine grounders and not fielded cleanly. I don't know that it's a lot of that's a play that he's just not good enough to make as a shortstop, but he would make it on the other side of the diamond. So I think that's something you have to keep in mind. The other thing, and this is more of a positive that it just occurred to me, is we saw them make a long-awaited move going into this year by moving Luis Garcia from second base to first base. Has that hurt his trade value? Probably not, because he's been hitting the cover off the ball and has done an adequate job, I guess, at first base. We'll see come Monday how much difference that makes and whether there's any real serious offers for him. But that would be a check mark in the column of go ahead and make the move. It could actually increase his value in terms of trades if he does better there. And most importantly, if he continues to hit to that extent.
No, you ask a worthy question. Are we sure Abrams would be a good defensive second baseman? And the answer is no, we're not sure. But at least if he's bad at second base, that's better than him being bad at shortstop. Honestly, that's how I would look at it. You'd rather him be bad at second base than be bad at shortstop. And I'm sure there are people listening saying, what about the outfield? I don't think this team needs any more outfielders. I think this team is pretty well set in terms of outfielders. But yeah, I mean, it's not crazy to say that. Maybe Abrams should be playing the outfield. Anyway, again, he's been killing it offensively, but the defense really does remain an issue. With Miles Mikolas in this 8-3 loss at the Braves on Saturday night, 4 runs in 6 innings, another game in which he gives up a bunch of runs, another game, though, in which he does eat up some innings. He gave up 9 hits, which were 3 homers, 2 doubles, and 4 singles, issued a walk, 3 strikeouts, 94 pitches, 60 strikes, 34 balls. I guess it doesn't matter because the Nats offense never really truly got going. But, bottom of the first, Mikolas allows 2 runs on back-to-back 1-out solo homers by Ronald Acuna Jr. and Matt Olson. Then you had Mikolas, bottom of the second, allowing a run on that aforementioned double by Yastrzemski, and then a 2-out opposite field RBI single by Drake Baldwin in the left field on a 1-2 pitch to put the Braves up 3-0. And then Mikolas, bottom of the fourth, allowed a run, gave up a leadoff full count homer by Dominic Smith to right field to put the Braves up 4-0. Despite Mikolas having had Smith down at 1.02, Dom Smith worked the count full and then homered off Miles Mikolas. Mikolas has given up a lot of home runs and 3 more allowed in this game.
That Dom Smith homer happened after an ABS challenge. It would have been strike 3, and he got it overturned, extended the at-bat, and then hit the home run. So good on our old buddy Dom Smith, who's having a great year, by the way, for the Braves. Go figure. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about Mikolas at this point. The one takeaway that I kind of had, and it speaks to the larger picture of the team, I understand why they've stuck with him up to this point. If they do sell come Monday, and they're acknowledging that they're not really all in on trying to win this year, do they continue to trot him out there, or do they say, you know what, thanks, buddy, you got an ERA in the high 5s. We only paid you $2.25 million. There are some young arms we want to get a look at for the future. I think that would be a very reasonable discussion for them to have, and I don't know there'd be a lot of complaints from everybody. I get it. You're still trying to hang on and be in this thing and not go into full-scale development mode here. But depending on what they do in the next 24, 36 hours, I think that is a discussion that may need to be had. There's not a whole lot of value in sending him out there for the final 2 months of the year if you have young starters that you want to get a look at. And I think we may be getting to a point where there's a couple of guys that are worth taking a look at.
We offer shout-outs on the Nats Chat podcast. Consider a shout-out like a message on the Nationals Park scoreboard. Email the man who runs the podcast, Tim Shovers, for more information. $25 a shout-out. The email address is natschatpodcast@gmail.com. And this comes to us from our friend Melissa Cohen, and it is for her father, the great Larry Cohen. Happy birthday to my dad, Larry Cohen. My dad and I have been faithful daily listeners to Nats Chat from the start and proudly wear our shirts often. But what I like most about Nats Chat is it has increased my Nats and overall baseball knowledge so much, which has allowed my dad and I to have even better baseball conversations. It is something to keep us connected every day. Happy birthday to the best dad. Love, Melissa, and of course, Phoebe. And I know we very much echo those sentiments. Larry and Melissa Cohen have been great supporters of this podcast. Love seeing them every year at our end-of-season parties at Walters. And happy birthday to Larry Cohen.
Yeah, very happy birthday, Larry. I've seen them both at the ballpark before on the road. They make some road trips. Very loyal supporters. You know, I know Tim's mom, Carol, wore the T-shirt the other night here in Atlanta because she lives down here. We appreciate that. And I've been hearing it a lot lately from our listeners and also my readers on Nats Journal, just how much they've enjoyed this season. You know, obviously this has been a long time coming. I know it may not at the moment be trending in the right direction, but it's still been a much more interesting and enjoyable season. And they tell me both through emails and when I meet them in person, how much the website, the Substack, and how much our podcast has helped contribute to that enjoyment. I know you and I and Tim have been waiting 5 years to be able to have these kind of discussions about a team in contention at the end of July into August. It's been rewarding for us, and it's nice to know how much that has added to fans' enjoyment of this season.
My favorite Larry Cohen moment was at last year's party. He was complaining to me about what Davey Johnson did from a bullpen management standpoint in Game 5 of the 2012 NLDS. So in October 2025, he was laying out his critiques from October 2012. That, my friends, is a loyal hardcore Nats fan, someone who is willing to do that 13 years after the fact. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat, courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat podcast.
New pitcher is Edwin Jackson, who has made 30 regular season relief appearances in his career and 3 in postseason, but none this year. Pitched 5 innings in Wednesday's Game 3, allowed 8 hits and 4 runs.
Sleep Number's new collections are designed to adapt to the changing nature of your life and your sleep needs. Whether it's the personalized comfort of the new Comfort Mode mattress, the targeted pressure relief of the Comfort Next mattress, or the Climate Collection that actively cools or warms to help you fall asleep and stay asleep.
And now, get early access to our biggest sale of the year. Save 25% on the new Comfort Next Luxe for a limited time. Only at a Sleep Number store or sleepnumber.com.